Welcome to What's Real with Adrien livestream, where I try to take the conversation a little deeper. And today we're going to be talking about taking the journey from ignorance to wisdom. You could also maybe say innocence to wisdom, but we'll see if that works as we go along here. I'm going to do that. I'm going to be talking or approaching that subject matter by using a very ancient tale and seeing if we can't draw a really beautiful metaphor out of that for this process of going from ignorance to wisdom. So I'm very excited about doing that. And of course, it starts with this story. And as all ancient stories must start, it starts a long, long time ago. There was a man who owned a great estate. It was a wealthy, fertile estate. And he was a father of two children, two sons, as a matter of fact. And one day, the youngest of his sons came up to him and he said, "Dad, I'd like my share of the estate now, if I could." And his father, okay. He did as he asked, and he divvied up the estate, and he gave his youngest son his inheritance, his portion of the inheritance. It wasn't long after that the son gathered up everything he had, and he took off to a distant land. It also wasn't all that long before this son squandered all of his inheritance. He ran through it, they say, in wild or decadent living, And of course, his life tends to be, it seems like sometimes when we're down already, life gives us a little extra blow. And just as he was realizing he was running out of his inheritance, a famine spread across the land. And he found himself in a pretty hard spot. He didn't know what to do. So he turned to another fellow man in this distant and foreign land, and he asked for some help. And this person did actually, gave him a job. But it was the lowliest of jobs. In fact, it was working with the pigs in the field. And even as he was doing this, he realized this wasn't working out too good. I mean, it got so bad for him that he was so hungry that the pig slop, the food that the pigs were eating, started to look good to him. It was right around then that all of a sudden he realized, or he remembered, you might say, no one on my father's estate ever starved. I mean, even the lowliest of servants had more food than they knew what to do with. And it was right around then that he knew what he had to do. And so he turned himself and started heading home. And as he did, he realized, if I have any chance of getting back into my father's estate, I'm going to have to make amends, So he started to ponder, what would that mean? And he realized in this pondering, too, just what he had done. I mean, the gravity of what he had done, squandering all this wealth, really started to settle in on him. One day, the father is working in his fields, and he sees from a far distance his son returning home. He drops everything he's doing, and he runs out to greet his son. He grabs him and hugs him and kisses him on the neck, and the son falls to the ground, and he says, Father, please forgive me. I've sinned against you. I've sinned against heaven. I'm not worthy to be called your son. But if you'll just take me back as one of your servants, I would be so happy to come back into your estate, even like that. The father would hear nothing of it. Matter of fact, he yelled out to his servants and he said, "Hey, grab the finest robe we have and bring a ring to put on my son's finger and break out the stuff for celebration. We're going to have a feast and celebrate. Because my son, who was dead moments ago, is now born again. My son, who was lost, is now found." I need a drink of water. As you probably know, this is the story of the prodigal son, told by Jesus in the Gospel of Luke. I'm going to do my best here with you to reverently extract some meaning from this story that you may not be used to hearing, actually. And it might, be surprising, actually, some of the things that we're going to be able to find that I believe that Jesus was planting within this metaphor. Because it's often thought about in a very certain specific way. And of course, that way I think is very true. But it goes deeper. And this is what I mean by taking the conversation deeper. And it excites me to think about doing this with you. Before we go there, though, I want to take 2 seconds to ask you that if you're enjoying the live stream and you enjoy these live streams that I do, to please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It really makes a difference in YouTube and all that's a whole algorithm thing, right? To help them discover me and the things that I'm trying to share, because I believe that there is value here for more people than just you. So by doing that, you're actually helping me do that. I appreciate it. So that being said, now let's talk about what could be some of the underlying meanings or purpose behind this beautiful and ancient parable from Jesus. Well, let's start in the beginning, right? Let's start with the great estate. Home. I'm probably going to refer to it a lot as we talk about this. The Father, home, this is the place we know. It's a place of plenty. It's a place that we come from, right? This is the beginning, so to speak. But we don't stop here. And as we'll find out as we talk about this more and more, too, we're not supposed to stop here. And all of us at some point say, this is great, but what about over there, right? I mean, the most textbook, consideration of that would be the child that grows up and it's time to go to college or move out of the house, right? I mean, that's a really just common, everyone experiences that, or almost all of us experience something like that, right? And we're journeying away from home, literally in that instance, right? But it doesn't have to be something like that. It could be starting a new job. Maybe you've already left home a long time ago, but you're going to have this new experience. You're going to take on this new challenge. You're going to start a new relationship. These are all ways that you could think about how this metaphor will apply in a very real manner, right? But no matter what that is, that circumstance is, we'll find as we launched away from our home, first we're taking everything we know, right? We're taking our inheritance, everything we know at this point in our life, everything we are at this point, and we set off to this distant land, to this different experience, right? Whether it's a relationship, a job, right? Anything like that. Now, at some point of this experience, whatever it is, college, the job, or relationship, we find that whatever we brought with us is gone to some degree, like it's spent. It gets used up. And a lot of times that's because we don't know how to properly use it, right? A great example of that would be not to be able to know how to appreciate the job. Like, in other words, there's always difficult parts about the job, right? Whatever the job is. And we might focus on those difficult parts too much and start to not be able to see the good parts of them. We're squandering this thing in a certain way, if you can see it. In a relationship, it's very, very common, right? We start off, it's great, it's fantastic, exciting. We're wildly living, we're decadently living in this relationship, right? We're enjoying it. And then the next thing you know, we start to take it for granted. Maybe we get married and we think, well, it's good, I'm married, all done, right? But we also know that doesn't work out too well usually, because what happens is we start squandering this relationship. We do this enough, we find ourselves in a pretty rough spot where we're not sure what to do. Sometimes we're not sure what happened, right? Why don't I enjoy my job anymore? I don't know. Why is my relationship going through this situation? Why is she all of a sudden or he all of a sudden talking to me about divorce or getting counseling? Like, what? Right? We find all of a sudden, gosh, what happened? I squandered something. Something's wrong. When we hit this place, what do we typically do? Do we turn around and go home and ask for help? No, very rarely. Now, of course, because we got to start talking about what this home is. This home is obviously not a place. It's not a place, right? That's the metaphor. The metaphor is a place. In real life, it's your home. It's your origin. It's this place within you. It's the treasure I'm always talking about. It's your authentic personal power that I'm always talking about. You've distanced yourself from it. So now all of a sudden you find that you don't know what to do, and you don't turn to that place. You all of a sudden turn to something in this foreign land, in this distant land. And what happens? What happens to the prodigal son? Well, it doesn't work out too good, right? I mean, he finds himself working in the fields with pigs. It gets so bad that pig slop starts to look good to him, right? So what does this mean in real life? What could this mean in our real life? Well, typically, this is when we turn to something like alcohol or drugs or shopping. It can be pornography. I mean, there's a million different things that we'll turn to try to get some comfort, to try to escape or avoid this fact that we don't know what's going on, right? I mean, if we're all of a sudden not enjoying our job anymore, we won't, typically, we're not going to turn inward and start figuring out what that is and why am I feeling this way and what have I done. We're going to probably just look to escape some of that discomfort, right? Like I said, that could be a couple of drinks at the end of the night. That could be looking forward to vacation after vacation after vacation as a way to escape and pretend like it's not happening. Rarely do we actually turn inward and start dealing with the issue that's at hand. And when we do this, when we turn to somebody in this foreign land, in this distant place, it doesn't help. We all know this, right? It gets worse. We find that pig slop starts looking pretty good. I mean, I could tell you this from my own personal experience. I've definitely partaken in some pig slop, thinking that was good. Actually, like that's what I needed. But at some point, we realize this isn't working. This isn't helping, right? This is the point that, any 12-step program would call hitting bottom. You've hit bottom. You've realized something has to change. Can't go on like this because it's not working, right? So at this point, what does the prodigal son do? He all of a sudden remembers, at home wasn't like this. Where I come from, there was always plenty. The moment he realized that, too, it's like all of a sudden he realized what he did more. Like all of a sudden he had to look at, wow, I'm far away from my home. I've squandered my wealth. I've really distanced myself from where I've come from. And that's why he immediately feels a sense of humility, sort of, right? I'm sure there's a lot of other feelings that come when that happens. I know from my experience it did. Self-loathing is a very common one, right? You're like, oh my God, I'm a loser. I can't believe I did that. That was a personal one for me. But you all of a sudden reflect. And this reflection comes from, this is something I really want to share with you, and I hope that you can feel. Because I don't know who you are watching this video. But you have to remember this home. Now, you don't have to remember it perfectly, and you won't. But I know, even though I don't know you, or where you are, or how far you've traveled away from this home that I'm pointing to, I know that you know it exists. Even if it's just a memory of being a child. And no matter, even if your childhood was rough, there was moments as a child that you remember feeling free and open and alive and joyful. That's home. And it exists still in you, but we'll get to that in a minute, right? But realizing that there is something different than where you are and that you've distanced yourself from this place is an incredibly important and powerful turning point in this whole cycle of ignorance to wisdom, right? Realizing that we come from something that isn't necessarily where we are right now. And then to turn and start traveling back. And again, when we do that, there has to be, there's almost always a realization of what we've done, right? How we've distanced ourselves. Maybe not all the details of how we've done that, but just the fact that it's happened, that I'm far away from where I want to be, where I used to be, where I come from. Now that language might not work exactly for you, but you'll realize it as you journey back that this is your home. I hope I can point that to you, make that clear as we go on here. So we turn and start heading home. Now here's my favorite part of the story. When I'm reading this story, and if I'm in a really good place, like I'm grounded and I'm feeling open myself, and often, I'm going to tell you the truth, that I've gotten teary-eyed and cried actually reading this part of the story. Because what happens? The son turns, starts heading home, he starts realizing what he's got to do, and the father sees him from far away. And he runs out to meet him halfway. This is the promise, that if we turn and start heading back, we'll receive some help. We won't have to make the whole journey all by ourselves. Now, we do have to make the turn. We do have to start heading back. But once we do that, and that has to do with a willingness, with a sincerity. Once we do, though, we'll start noticing things changing. That's how I would say, this is how it would manifest itself. Obviously, your father's not going to come running out and greet you, right? In your real life, though, you'll start noticing a difference. You'll start noticing you feel a little different. What a gift, right? Especially if you've traveled a long way away from this place of feeling good. You know, in the parable, and I hope I said it, I think I did, he says, I sinned against heaven. I love that part. It's such an interesting little detail. I sinned against heaven. And what does that mean, or what could that mean? Well, if you look at the origin of the word sin, it's commonly known these days that means, it actually means miss the mark. Like, in other words, you're shooting an arrow and you're trying to hit the target and you miss it. That's the origin of the word sin, right? So you missed heaven. I missed heaven. How did he do that? How do we do that, actually? Maybe it's even better to talk about it like that. How do we do that? Well, we mistake heaven, which I would say, for my language, that would normally be, I would call that joy. This place that you come from, your home. That thing that you knew so innocently and abundantly in a certain way as a child, right? Joy, we mistook it. We missed that mark by focusing on happiness. By seeing something out in the distant land that we thought, ooh, that's it. That's going to make me happy. That's what I'm looking for. And we travel out to check it out, to do it, to go for it, right? Now, we haven't gotten into this, but I'm going to say it right now. It's a little foreshadowing. That's not a mistake, right? So you're not doing something wrong because you do that. At least that's how I see it. And hopefully you'll see what I'm trying to say as we journey on, as we continue from ignorance to wisdom here, right? So we see that thing and we think that's what happiness is. I got to try that out, right? That's missing the mark, though, because we mistook happiness for joy. And it took us away from our home to figure this out. So we go out, we try this thing. Here's the funny thing. Even our marriage can be that. Now, marriage is a sacred thing. So I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't get married or it's a bad thing. I'm saying, though, that if you think it's going to make you happy or if it's going to bring you joy, bring you back to your home, you're probably mistaken because it doesn't exist out there. Your home is inward, is in you. Jesus said that too. The kingdom of heaven is within. It's a great, this kind of ties it up a little bit here, right? So anyways, the father runs out to meet him and greets him, right? And he's celebrated for this whole thing. Think about it. He celebrated for squandering all his wealth. It's kind of a counterintuitive thing in a way, right? Now, of course, he lays down the story that it's because you were lost and now you're found, because you were dead and now you're reborn. I'm using you're born again. I didn't talk about what happens. I wanted to keep the story short, but right after that, Jesus talks about the eldest son and how he responds to this whole thing. And it's a very important part of the story, so I'm going to tell you it now, okay? This is going to really start bringing this whole thing together, I think, tying it together, what I'm trying to share with you. So the oldest son, the tent's out, and they're having the party, and everybody's celebrating the return of the youngest son, and the eldest son's sitting out there, and he's like, the father comes out and he's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm not going in there. He's like, this is terrible. This is ridiculous. Father, I've been here all the time, this whole time, working for you, honoring you. You've never shown me, you've never thrown me a celebration. And the father says, look, son, I understand. Look, everything I own is yours. Our home. We all share it, this home. And I love it. Everything I have is yours. But your brother, he was lost, and now he's found. He was dead, and he's been born again. He's been brought back to life. This is reason to celebrate. Please come in the tent and celebrate with us. It's so beautiful. And to me, what I mean when I say that is to realize, like I said, this is not a mistake. This is the Father, or Jesus really, right? Because he's telling the story, saying, look, this is not a mistake. You didn't travel and squander your wealth and come back and humble yourself for no reason. Actually, quite the opposite. I'm celebrating your return. This is something to honor. This is a very natural cycle to life. You know, it's not hard to see, by the way, the parallels to the story of the Garden of Eden, you know, which is a Hebrew story, right? I mean, of course, Christianity comes from the Hebrew tradition, but that's not a Christian story. Like, Jesus wasn't walking around. That was something that existed way before him. But you can see the parallel there, right? We get thrown out of the garden. And in a certain way, it's like our journey to come back, to find the Garden of Eden, right? It's a similar sort of story. And that's not a mistake. You know, we weren't cast out of the Garden of Eden because we made some, I mean, that's the story goes like, because we made some big mistake, but that wasn't a mistake. You know, that would be to say that the guy running the show, God, didn't know what he was doing. Of course he knew what he was doing. This is part of what we're meant to do. And when we realize this, by the way, when we take that turn, when we realize we're empty, we've spent our inheritance, I don't know what to do. When we realize that, if we understand this thing I'm trying to share with you, the fact that this is an important journey that you're on, it'll happen all the faster. It'll mean more. You know, there's another thing, like, again, I don't know who you are watching this or where you are in this journey, but I want you to know this. Quite honestly, the further you've traveled away from your home, the greater the return. The more, this is why it's very common for somebody who's been an addict to have such a powerful experience after, like for their life to be much fuller than it ever was before. Quite often, they'll say, I'm grateful for the whole thing. And some of these people have gone through crazy, crazy things. You know, I've gone through my share. I know people have gone through a lot worse, you know. And I can honestly tell you, personally, I'm grateful. Why? What's the purpose to this thing, this journey? Why do I got to venture out and come back? Why can't I just stay home, right? Because, let me say it like this too. I'm going to say it like this. Quite often, again, depending on where you are, and actually it doesn't matter where you are, it matters how far you are from this place, from this, your home, will determine how strongly you're going to feel this thing I'm going to explain to you. This circle. Right? Do you ever feel like your life is in this repetitious circle? Like you keep having the same experiences? If you're an addict, right? That's very common. You want to quit, but you can't. You want to, you can't. You want to, you can't. You know, you're in that cycle, and it feels like a circle. Like your life is just, it's overbearing in a way, right? You just can't. You just keep doing the same thing. It could be relationships, right? You keep getting in the same bad relationship. It could be a job. We use these things. It's the same thing, right? You keep finding the same crap, or you get a new job and you hate it, just the same as you hated the other one. You know, this cycle over and over and over again. You start something, you can't finish it, right? All these, there's a million different examples, and your life feels very repetitious, like nothing is happening. What's going on? You, my friend, are on the journey from ignorance or innocence to wisdom. And this cycle, this thing that's feeling like a circle, it's not a circle. It's a spiral. So depending on where you are in your life, you might not realize this feeling that's going around and around. And what's happening is that line in the spiral is so close to the other line, I don't know if you can visualize this, that you don't notice any difference. It just feels like the same old thing. But if I were to stretch it out for you, you would notice it's doing this. You're going deeper, my friend. Whether you want to or not, whether you mean to or not, this is the message I would love to share with you today, though. If you become conscious of this thing that's happening, whether you want it to or not, if you become conscious of it, you'll start noticing differences. It'll start spreading it out. Like if you take that turn and start returning home and you're conscious of it. This is why, like the 12-step program for an addict is so useful and beautiful, because it gives them a way to start becoming conscious of this return journey. And they start working with this. And all of a sudden, it takes time, and it could take many times of falling off the wagon, as they would say, right? But it doesn't matter, because in the end, you're collecting whatever it is that you're missing, that you don't realize. You're learning, my friend. You're learning. And you can't help it. Think of it like gravity, right? If you're spinning this thing around, there's something, your home, honestly, pulling you. So even if you kind of almost don't want it to change and you're trying to keep, it won't let you. It's pulling you. You're going round and around, and it's taking you deeper and deeper and deeper. And this, by the way, is what's added. This is the purpose of the cycle. The cycle, which feels like a circle sometimes, right, is really a spiral, and it's there because you go out and you come back. You don't come back the same. You've brought depth with you. You've brought an appreciation for your home like you could never have had before. This is why the father in the story is so happy and excited and wants to celebrate. Yes, sure, because he thought his son was dead, right? But also because he's new. His son's been born again. He's a new person. He has an appreciation for his estate now that he certainly didn't have in the beginning, right? Hey, give me my portion, I'm out of here. Right? There wasn't a lot of humility there. There wasn't a lot of appreciation for what he had. But he comes back a totally changed person. Now, here's the other thing that I really want to share with you that's so beautiful, that I love, that I try to live personally every day. And I encourage you to do the same, to discover this thing that I'm talking about and start making this journey. It doesn't happen in just the big job. It doesn't just happen in your marriage in some big cycle of like, oh, I met her, we get married, we have problems, we get, by the way, anybody who's come close to divorce and come back knows they're always grateful for that. It makes their relationship better every time if they're able to find their way through it. Anyways, though, the point is, every time you take that cycle, you're deepening, right? You're doing something more than you even realize. So, I hope that you can see the merit in this journey and the fact that you are on it. This setting out to a distant land and returning a different person is what you're doing. That's your whole cycle of life. I forgot where I was going. So the point is that you don't just do it on a grand scale. It happens every day, multiple times a day. If you're an addict, you'll notice that, right? You'll have that urge, and you got to work with it, right? There's a million different things. I don't want to narrow down to any one, thing, one specific topic. But if you're having marital problems, you'll notice that same habitual way of behaving with your partner, right? That's not the big cycle. That's the small little cycle. Okay, say you're not having any problems. How does this work for me personally? I get caught up. I get caught up in whatever I'm working on, whatever I'm doing. And all of a sudden I realize I'm not home. I'm not feeling so settled. I'm not feeling so at peace and joyful, you might even say. Or I'm just really distracted in a certain way. I'm feeling ungrounded multiple times a day. But this is my practice because this is what I do now. I realize that this cycle, this spiral, I'm dedicated to this thing personally. So all of a sudden I realize that I take a second. It doesn't take long either as you get better at it. I take a moment to recenter, to remember my home. To realize I got distracted. I got carried away. It's okay, by the way, don't forget. There's nothing wrong with that. That's part of it. But then every time I come back, it's like, ooh, wow. Almost forgot that for a second. It seems weird that you can, but you do. And it's okay. Every time you do that, you come back better in a way, deeper, richer. I don't want to say better, because it's not about getting better even, because this thing that you're returning to is always the same. So, this is the story of the prodigal son. In my personal take, I hope it did add some depth to you. I don't know if there's any questions. We don't see anything like that. I think it's around here locally, especially, it's a beautiful day. So I hope you're out there enjoying it. I want to share something that I'm going to start talking about a lot because I'm crazy excited about it. And it's a way to experience what I'm talking about, actually, because it's the same sort of a cyclical nature, it's the same sort of journey in a very small fashion. I have just launched a brand new online course, and it's called The Real Approach. There's actually a link to it in the description to the video, so you can just click on that. I'm so excited to be, sharing this, and it's brand new. I just launched it, a couple days ago, that I'm offering it for free for a limited time. So all you gotta do is, there's a code in there. If you're watching on YouTube, I think it's YouTube 100, and you put that in, the coupon code, and you'll get the course, the $120 course, totally for free. And that's, of course, one, because I'm excited, I want to share it. Two, I'm hoping to get some input. Like, in other words, you'll leave a review about it. You can share your experience. It'll help me share that with other people. It'll help me improve the course. So I'm really excited to share it with you. The Real Approach is, it's an acronym. So REAL is an acronym, and it stands for Remember, Evoke, Allow, and Let Go. And those four things, happen in a cycle, very similar to this journey I'm sharing with you. So it's an in and out motion, and it goes with our breath. So when we remember, we breathe in. When we evoke, we breathe out. So it's that cycle. Can you feel it? Going away, coming back, going away, coming back. And then the next breath is we allow in, and we let go out. There's a lot of power there. I hope that it intrigues you at least a little bit. It's free right now, so I encourage you to click on the link and check it out. It's a very short course, so it won't take you that long to take it. I think you're going to find a lot of useful. It's great if you struggle with depression or anxiety or anger, any of those sorts of things. The course is really focused on trying to help you deal with your emotions and things that are happening in real time, so that you learn this process and it becomes something fluid that helps you process what's going on as you're going through it. And this, believe it or not, really starts the journey back home. The more you allow and let go, that's what happens. You start turning and returning home to this place that is the land of plenty, so to speak, right? Your authentic personal power, as I always like to say. As always, I'm so grateful for your time because it's precious.